just by referring to a couple of the questions that have been brought up, and forgive my dulcet tones, it's prolonged illness. I mean, Cathy asked a question about leadership and figureheads and so on, and if I can just briefly make a comment about that. One of my worries is that when you've got figureheads are very easily chopped off. And when you've got the Better Together campaign deliberately hoisting Alex Salmond up as their claim to be the figurehead of the independence movement, they deliberately do that in order to chop his head off in the hope they can chop off the heads of the entire Yes Scotland movement by saying to people, well, if you don't like Alex Salmond, then don't vote for independence. When the two things are not related, full credit to Salmond and company, who's been clever enough to bring us this far to get a referendum. But voting yes is not a vote for Alex Salmond. It's not a vote for the SNP. It gives you the choice of choosing that in the future if you want. I'd argue against it. But it gives you the chance to self-govern. And then the thing about figureheads, or whatever you want to call it, leadership, probably a better expression than one you used yourself. I think all of us, in whatever different capacities, are already playing the role of leadership. Whether it be leadership in your street, in their local community, in your school, in your college, in your workplace, in your own local pro-independence group that's campaigning on the streets or whatever, and people have grown massively in their self-confidence and self-belief during the course of this referendum campaign because they've engaged with something that is a big choice and they have to think about it, and there's a hell of a lot at stake. And therefore, for example, I wouldn't go around saying I am the leader of my union at work, but a lot of the members would say that about me, because I stand up for members, represent them to the best of my ability, don't take no for an answer, and fight to the bitter end to get the best possible result. And many of thousands of people do that on a voluntary basis like me, no pay for it, it's entirely in your own time or during work time if allowed, and it's a case where leadership at ground level, the equivalent for people that fight every day for improvements to their housing estate or scheme or whatever they live in, who are involved in tenants groups, in community-based organisations, voluntary groups and so on, down to women and toddlers groups or whatever it might be. There's people who play leadership roles at every level in society, and that I think actually is a glimpse of the future, where we've got a society where there's a massive involvement in the running of your local area, of your workplace, of your community, of your city, of the country as a whole. So it's not left down to one person, a couple of people, even a dozen people, because that doesn't work. If you've got such a centralised power, it ends up not only in disillusionment and failure, but frequently in dictatorship, as countries such as the Soviet Union of the past illustrated. And without getting into that as a subject to digress, I think what we need is to have the vision of a very democratic Scotland under independence, and for us, a democratic socialist Scotland. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, amongst other things, the fact that when big business have made these rumblings about if you vote yes, we're away, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. I don't actually know of any of them that have actually said that. When you read the small print, that's the headlines. It was a politically calculated announcement. The timing was deliberate, because when Osborne and company, helped by the Labour leadership and the Lib Dem leadership, come up and said, if you dare go independent, you can't have the pound in your pocket will be taken away, was a crude message they were trying to bully Scottish people with, as if literally any money you've got left after paying for the energy bills they impose on you and so on, or the food bills, is going to be taken away from you. That was the kind of subliminal message. But that was timed consciously, in my view, to come about just before the annual company reports come out, which is usually at the turn of the financial year in April. And then the financial reports of the companies come out, and the standard lives of this world and so on started talking in terms of, well, if there's an independence vote, we will have to reconsider our operation. It was that kind of language. It wasn't saying, we're buggered off and you'll never see us again. But it was turned into that by the headlines in the biased press, which every single one of them apart from the Scottish Socialist Voice forever, of this campaign, and more recently the Sunday Herald have joined us in arguing for a yes vote. And so, when you've got the national media bringing out distorted lies, frankly, in terms of the headlines from those comments from companies, it's no wonder that then people begin to panic that you won't have a job because they'll all go away. Because as Colin said, they're here for the money. They don't give a damn about your accent, your colour, your creed, or otherwise. They want money, they want profit. And when you've got the likes of these companies that have big bases in sometimes even 20 or 30 other countries, why would they withdraw from Scotland when all those other countries, including, for example, near neighbours in the south of Ireland, are independent of Britain? And yet they operate there because they make a packet, amongst other things, out of low taxation on big business, which of course is what Alex Salmond's offering them as well, and we totally disagree with. So don't be terrified by the lies that are pumped out by the media based on a kind of a half comment by big business, when in fact big business are more interested in profit than location. And if the location gives them enough profit, that's where they'll stay and they'll move about accordingly. And when it comes to people coming here, the only thing I would add, nail the lie with one simple fact. People who emigrate to this country take back in benefits far less than they give into the system of taxation and so on. For example, one figure, Manchester University showed that immigrants into, in this case it's British figures, UK figures, they take back in benefits £8.8 billion less last year than they give into the likes of the taxation and the insurance system. Because the vast majority of people who emigrate, if they're not fleeing persecution and civil war, which is common enough, and should be extended the hand of friendship, not the fist of fascism and fury, they're otherwise maybe just moving to better themselves economically. And there's a pattern that has been studied in the past, over the decades, that where you can trace emigration into the country according to the economic conditions at the time. When there's mass unemployment, people don't uproot their families from other countries to charge over here. Because after all, what are they offered? Absolute pittance of a benefit if they get any, which they couldn't live on. Nobody can live on. And so therefore there's a pattern where, with the economic prospects being improved, then there's a tendency for slightly more people to come in. And by the way, the other simple point I'll finish on that issue is that there's as many, just about identical numbers of Scottish people live in other European Union countries as European Union citizens move into Scotland. So it balances out, and it's a nonsense to paint this picture as they do in the media, to help UKIP obviously included, and all the mainstream parties, that we've been flooded by this deluge, this human tide that's invading the shores and taking it over. And as Katie quite rightly said, the key question then is what kind of Scotland we have. Because we need housing to be built and renovated. We need to insulate the homes in Scotland, to avoid the heat that you pay through the nose for, to enrich 6 big companies for their profits, and the energy supply companies like Scottish Power, Scottish Gas, etc. You need insulation in the vast majority of the houses, especially the older stock. To do that, you need to employ people. You need to build things and create the equipment and the engineering and so on that goes with it. We need houses built. There's terrible levels of homelessness and substandard and slum housing in this country. And if you were to have an employment scheme created in an independent Scotland, where there'd be public building programmes, where you would have apprentices for the first time, real ones, not the so-called modern apprentices on £2.68 an hour that you have right now. That's the minimum wage, by the way, legally. It's gone up to £2.71, I think it is in October, so celebrate. But if you had real apprenticeships and jobs, skilled jobs, to build homes and to insulate and renovate existing homes, if you also look at the fact that we've been named by somebody as the potential Saudi Arabia of green energy, in terms of offshore powers and tidal powers and wave powers and so on, that could create hundreds of thousands of jobs, skilled jobs, green jobs for clean production of energy, and the apprenticeships and the training that goes with it. And if people do want to come to Scotland to be part of that workforce, fine. It's a fairly empty country after all, in terms of the Highlands and so on in particular. It's not exactly bursting at the seams geographically and in population density. So it's a case where if you create those jobs and build useful things, or if instead, for example, of the workers on the Clyde, a couple of remaining shipyards, in the place that Glasgow, where Glasgow used to be the shipbuilding centre of the world, and now has a couple remaining, hanging on a shaky nail, with threats from some thuggish Labour MPs like Ian Davidson that I'm debating with next Wednesday in Cardonald College, who said that if independence is voted, there should be a clause that says all the jobs in the Clyde will move to Portsmouth. So he's trying to blackmail the workers of Scotland into voting to stay in a state that has exploited them to the hilt. But if instead relying on war and battleships and destroyers, we built things like hospital ships to provide medical aid to the poorest continents in the world. If we had, instead of building battleships, a plan to produce things like the engineering equipment for offshore energy supplies for this country and others, even exported, if you had things like that, you would cure several things. Mass unemployment, low wages, lack of future for young people. You would tackle pollution. You would tackle fuel poverty, which blights 1 in 3 homes in Scotland. You would tackle all those things, provided also you used the fabulous obscene profits that some of these companies make in order to invest in those things. For example, why not just don't stop at what the SNP have said. If they take government in 2016, they've promised to bring Royal Mail back into public ownership. That's welcome. Some of the SSP has fought for all along. There's no justification for it being privatised, as you've seen from the profit figures the last few days and so on. So now there are threats of removing the universal delivery service. So that should be brought into public ownership. But why stop there, like the SNP white paper does? We believe you should also bring the energy companies into public ownership, use their resources and wealth to do some of the things I've just mentioned, but also the likes of the transport system, the buses, that Brian Souter and Anne Gloag are now amongst Scotland's richest. They're worth £1 billion. They're amongst the billionaires in Scotland that have just been announced. And so they have made a packet out of privatisation of transport. And then, of course, they give a substantial amount of it to the SNP, by the way, for their campaigning funds, which tells you something about the SNP's outlook. But we believe that instead of that setup of private individuals amassing disgusting levels of income and wealth from some of this essential, like public transport, which could end the isolation a lot of people suffer, you could invest by taking public ownership of all forms of transport. And we as a party, I'll not dwell on it for time's sake, we have pioneered the arguments for a free public transport, that everything, buses, trains, subways, ferries and so on, should be free of charge by a bit of investment and using the wealth of the existing private companies to help to initiate that process. It would take away some of the car pollution, it would take away some of the socialisation that people suffer now in communities in Scotland, and it would create jobs by building a whole infrastructure for an integrated, efficient, regular service of every form of public transport. That's just to illustrate a couple of examples. It's not the entire shopping list, so to speak, of what you could do in the beginnings of a socialist Scotland under self-government. And I think, therefore, that what we have to do for, not just now, but after the 18th of September, is adopt the motto, don't go home, don't go away. When Alex Salmond talks about Team Scotland, I'll say this bluntly, he talks about reptiles like Lord Warmongering Robertson, George Robertson, to be part of that negotiating team. If you, as a union convener, was negotiating for wage rises with your employer, would you bring the company director in on your side? I mean, for Christ's sake, what sense does it make? You're bringing saboteurs into the room to be on your side of the negotiations with Westminster government. I think it should be representatives of the people who vote yes, if we assume that for now, who vote yes, who give the mandate to the people that negotiate. It's the ones that have been part of the yes movement as a whole, which includes the Scottish Socialist Party, who are more than ready to offer that part of leadership, of collective leadership in the battle with Westminster, to say, for example, maybe, we'll take our share of the debt, but given that we pay far more every year to Westminster than we get back, we'll wipe that amount off the debt that we owe and see what the balance sheet is. That's fair enough. That's decent arithmetic and honesty. That'd be a negotiating stance I would advocate if I was there, I'd do. But I'd do the sums first. But the thing is, we can advocate that, but you won't get it unless you're organised. We won't get a yes vote unless we continue to be organised. And of course, there's all sorts of forms of organisation to achieve independence. There's the Yes Scotland campaign itself, so there's the Radical Independence campaign. But within the political formations, the only party that for the last almost 16 years, this September, has advocated an independent socialist Scotland is the SSP. That's a statement of fact. We fought for that when it was highly unpopular and seemed unrealistic. Now's the chance. So why don't you join us if you are convinced by our ideas or vision? Join us and help to achieve that. And don't go away on the 19th of September or the 20th or beyond. Obviously have a holiday when you want, like, but you know what I mean, don't permanently disappear. Be part of an organised force to demand that Trident is non-negotiable. Because I fear that that's exactly what some people have in mind. That, for example, they might say, if you give us a currency union, we'll prolong the life of Trident on the Clyde. Maybe not keep it indefinitely, but give you another 10 years to sort out what you're doing or whatever. Despite the fact, for example, the White Paper says it'll be removed within the first Parliament. Well, it was by 2020, 4 years after the 2016 election. I think we have to be hard line on various issues like that, as well as demand a decent living wage. And by the way, saying, if small companies can afford £9 an hour, like we would demand on today's figures, 2/3 the average male wage, that's where it comes from, that figure. It's not a neat figure, but that's what it is at the minute. £9 an hour for everybody over 16, equal pay for women. If a small company employing 2 or 3, 4 people can't afford that, let's turn things upside down on that as well. Right now, the government, the taxpayer, subsidises big companies to pay low wages because they pay buttons and then you have work and tax credit. So why not turn it upside down and say, well, get rid of that, we'll have a decent living wage, and then if a small company can't afford the £9 or whatever it is by then we'll subsidise them if they're doing something decent for society. We have a whole vision of what to achieve, but I'll finish by saying that's not going to be dreamt into existence. You need a dream if you're going to get any reality. You need a dream to aim at, but you need to be organised and have determination and willpower to achieve it. And my appeal to you tonight is don't leave the room without considering joining the Scottish Socialist Party. I promise we won't lock the doors. But don't leave without thinking about joining the Scottish Socialist Party and maybe join on the spot. Also, by the way, give what you can towards the cost of the meeting. Just a whip round, because this costs us a fortune, £100 in leaflets alone, as well as the venue. So give what you can, but above all, give us some of your brain power, give us some of your idealism, some of your dedication, some of your leadership at whatever level you want to give it in your community, your family, your workplace, wherever it might be, for the future, to achieve that independent socialist Scotland where we're all leaders, if you want to put it that way, in a kind of a generalised sense.